Good evening. Is Christianity in disarray? I think so. There is so much available that on the internet, on YouTube specifically, and other platforms, that debunk Christianity, that ridicule Christianity, that make fun of Christianity, that mock Christianity, that that reveals the brutality of Christianity over the millennia. So today's discussion is going to be, is Christianity in disarray? I'm going to start off with a few videos which hopefully will evolve into a conversation room discussion. And these videos should point out to you, in my opinion anyway, should point out that Christianity not only is in disarray, but it's on the way out. We're going to start off with, what was that? We are going to start off, how come that didn't, there we go. We're going to start off with J.L. Warren. What J.L. Warren does in this upcoming video, and I haven't watched it, I'm watching this for the first time, but what he does is he tears down he debunks the philosophy, the view that was thought up originally by a Dutchman named Cornelius Van Til, and until today is the foundation for the presuppositionalist argument, namely by presuppositionalists in this community: Darth Dawkins, Ben Artangelo, Grasso, Antonio, and all the others. Pretty much every Christian. I've watched J.L. Warren before. He is very, very well spoken and substantive. So I invite you all to enjoy this. Enjoy the next 18 minutes and 50 seconds.
Presuppositionalists often claim that atheists are unable to defeat their arguments due to a fundamental lack of understanding of their position. Well, buckle up, because we're going to settle this once and for all by going hard in the paint against the big bad daddy of presuppositional apologetics himself, Cornelius Van Til. Hey everyone, JL here, and welcome back to Bridge the Divide, where I examine irrational beliefs, the irrational behaviors that follow, and how we, with education, rationality, and reason, can bridge the societal divides that they create. Now, before we begin our deep dive into Cornelius Van Til, we're going to have to answer two questions. One, who exactly was Cornelius Van Til? And two, what exactly is presuppositional apologetics? So, first question, who was Cornelius Van Til? Born in Grootgast, Netherlands, to Ait Van Til in 1895, Cornelius would go on to become a Calvinist philosopher and theologian. He is most credited as the progenitor of modern presuppositional apologetics. For context, Calvinism is a major branch of Protestantism that focuses on doctrine set down by Reformation-era theologian John Calvin. Its emphases are on the sovereignty of God, the authority of the Bible, the total corruption of original sin, and predestination, that some are meant to be saved and others are not. After his family emigrated to Highland, Illinois in 1905, escaping the steep economic depression in the Netherlands, Cornelius grew up working with his father on a dairy farm. He was educated at Calvin Preparatory Academy, and around 1918 he entered Calvin College, both Calvinist evangelical programs within the educational arm of the Christian Reformed Church, or CRC. Founded in 1857 by Dutch immigrants, the CRC is a Protestant denomination that has its roots in the Dutch Reformed Church of the Netherlands and is theologically Calvinist. It was there at Calvin College that Van Til would develop an interest in the conservative Dutch Reformed theologians. From there, Van Til would go on to Calvin Theological Seminary, where he studied under Louis Berkhof. Berkhof was an American Reformed theologian whose primary work was in systematic theology. Systematic theology is a discipline of Christian theology that formulates an orderly, rational, and coherent account of the doctrines of Christian faith. Berkhof's teachings would later start Van Til down the path of his own systematic theological work. After a year, and to avoid a growing religious controversy, Van Til would leave CTS and head over to Princeton Theological Seminary, where he would eventually graduate with a PhD in philosophy. Then, for undetermined reasons, Van Til would leave academia and take up the minister position of a small CRC congregation in Spring Lake, Michigan, where he stayed for about a year. It was then that Princeton would offer him a position teaching apologetics, and after a year, a professorship of apologetics. But Van Til would turn the offer down, because at the time, Princeton School of Theology was undergoing a major religious modernization, with the organization shifting to a more liberal stance as opposed to its historically conservative one. It is this near pathological avoidance of opposing thought, modernization, and progressivism that I think will be the first clue into understanding the mind of Van Til. Van Til spent a brief time back with his congregation before he and 3 other Princeton faculty members then founded the conservative Westminster Theological Seminary in Philadelphia. And after 43 years teaching at Westminster, Van Til would enter semi-retirement in 1972, but occasionally returned to teach until 1979. He passed away in 1987 at the age of 91, preceded by his wife Rena and his son Earl. In his lifetime, Van Til was published more times than I can count. He also composed over 20 books covering various areas of his expertise. His body of work would go on to influence a number of theologians, philosophers, and internet personalities, including Francis Schaeffer, John Frame, Greg Bonson, R.J. Rushdoony, and you guessed it, our very own Darth Dawkins.
Don't overtalk me.
Van Til is also remembered for the Kuiper-Warfield synthesis. The Kuiper-Warfield synthesis was Van Til's attempt to establish a middle ground between the work of Netherlands Prime Minister, Dutch nationalist, and neo-Calvinist Abraham Kuyper, and the differing views of Princeton theology professor B.B. Warfield. His concrete adherence to the transcendental argument, his incendiary relationship with fellow Calvinist theologian Karl Barth over Barth's use of Kantian epistemology, and the epic Clark-Van Til controversy are a few more notable moments that we will take a look at. And on to our second question. Just what is presuppositional apologetics? Presuppositional apologetics is a school of Christian apologetics that claims that rational thought is only possible with the Christian worldview as its basis. It presupposes the supernatural revelation of the Bible and works predominantly to expose the flaws in other worldviews. Critics of this school of thought challenge it as being logically invalid because it begs the question of the truth of Christianity and the non-truth of all other worldviews. And they would be right. It is logically invalid.
You are made of stupid.
So, is that it? Van Til and his entire presuppositional apologetic are begging the question and therefore logically invalid. That should be it, right?
Yeah. Stick around.
Well, sure, we could stop there. But it's important to understand the mind of Van Til himself, and the simple fact that he did more harm to the movement of Christianity than he may have actually realized. First and foremost, we need to understand the very nature of the man himself. Van Til grew up at the turn of the century, a time when economic hardships were at their worst. The Netherlands were in a state of economic crisis. Implementing the steam power-based industrial revolution of the 19th century was severely delayed, while the problems with the old Dutch economic system were repaired and replaced. It was a time of extreme hardship, with many families faced with either taking their chances with the uncertain future of the Dutch economy or immigrating to what they hoped would be greener pastures. Now, it's no mystery that such hardships can definitely inform a person's perspective, and Van Til saw his fair share growing up. It could be posited that the difficulties he and his family faced in his formative years would later inform his relentless work ethic, his overwhelming desire to avoid direct controversy or progressive change, and his militaristic and belligerent adherence to his reformed theology. Throughout his life, Van Til would do everything he could to avoid direct controversy, either by simply leaving the situation or using his acerbic nature to ward it off. Prime examples of this were Van Til's quick departure from CTS for Princeton when attitudes were becoming too liberal for him. And that was followed by a sudden departure from Princeton when that institution underwent a progressive reform as well. But arguably the best example was when Van Til heard about a planned visit to Westminster by church historian John Gerstner. Van Til wrote to him saying, "You may have heard that it is a great sin to differ with Van Til on his views of apologetics. You may also have heard that anyone who does and comes in striking distance of Philadelphia would have his head cut off. So I would advise you not to come near my office." Putting aside the fact that he referred to himself in the third person, friends of Van Til's would say that he was only joking, that his rhetoric was not a mirror of the man himself, that in person he was actually quite gracious and humble. Was such behavior just the hyperbolic rhetoric of a philosophical gadfly? Or was it the passive-aggressive behavior of a cowardly conservative who was terrified of the future and the change that it brought? While we contemplate those possibilities, let's jump to the two largest issues with Van Til, one often discussed and the other sometimes overlooked. It was Van Til's unrelenting assertions about the creator-creation distinction between God and man that led to his direct confrontation with Gordon Clark. Put simply, it was because Clark espoused an interpretation of the nature of God that threatened everything Van Til had spent his career building. Van Til saw Clark's position as dangerous because it proposed a neutral approach to the incomprehensibility of God, focusing on what humans can actually know, and primarily relying on their autonomous reasoning to determine the truth. From this neutral position, Van Til believed that Clark was ultimately justifying human reliance on their own autonomy. Van Til asserted that the creator-creation distinction established the irrefutable sovereignty and hierarchy of God as the grounds for all reason. He justified this with the controversial doctrine of total depravity. The doctrine of total depravity asserts that human beings' ability to reason has been corrupted by original sin, therefore rendering it unreliable. Van Til would argue that because of that inherent corruption, humans must reject their autonomous reasoning and rely solely upon the authority of the Bible and the sovereignty of God to know the truth of anything. From there, the sovereignty of God becomes an epistemological principle as much as it is a religious and metaphysical one. In the article, A Critique of Cornelius Van Til, D.R. Trethewey describes Van Til's system as nothing more than a priori dogmatic transcendental irrationalism, which he has attempted to give a Christian name to. It's also been suggested that Van Til's assertion of the creator-creation distinction is justified by nothing more than the basic etymological leaps from creature to creation to creator. The debate that took place between Van Til and Clark was regarded as deeply intense.
Round 1, fight!
And when the dust settled, many critics cited it as not evidence for the incomprehensibility of God, but for the incomprehensibility of Van Til himself. Van Til's complaint ultimately failed, and Clark was ordained. It was a result that is often seen as the lowest point of Van Til's career and a dark time for the Orthodox Presbyterian Church. Herman Hoeksema, founder of the Protestant Reformed churches, addressed Van Til's position. He argued in their periodical The Standard Bearer that the irrationalism of the Westminster faculty disguised their Arminian doctrines, which they insisted were truly reformed. Conspiratorial thinking aside, we do have to ask, what would compel a man to attack his own? It could be argued that Van Til's position was informed by years of intense conservative evangelical training, that the minister's education and training reinforced an observation that more and more people were, to his interpretation, slipping from the faith, something he saw Clarke's argument leading to. That Van Til's entire position was methodically and myopically, through years of meticulous effort, designed specifically and solely to keep people in the faith. And he would accomplish this by demanding and justifying a total suspension of his congregation's reason in favor of what he asserted was God's reason. But really, his loss came about because of the second, somewhat overlooked issue with Van Til, and that was his utterly ridiculous use and sanctimonious butchering of language itself. Mark Garcia, a proponent of Van Tillian thought, spoke at length of Van Til's often impenetrable and painful prose, often giving theological and philosophical terms his own unique definitions. Garcia also addressed Van Til's sometimes maddening revisionist use of vocabulary. This issue with Van Til's work has led to innumerable problems with even understanding what Van Til was trying to say, that a combination of his ostentatious, possibly pretentious style and atypical vernacular has only further confounded what are already deeply complex and highly subjective fields of philosophical thought. And since Van Til isn't around anymore, to get a real sense of the legacy he left, we only need to look at the behavior of his proponents. The authoritarian style in which they preach Van Til's position. The demand for total suspension of human reason to justify that position. The assertion that without the Christian God, you can't know anything at all. Considering all of this, I think the conclusion becomes incredibly clear. Science has always taken the position that because humans are not omniscient, we can't know anything for absolute certainty. This intellectually honest position is what drives the search for more evidence, demands reliance on predictive modeling, and also makes science provisional. It is this provisional nature that Van Til philosophically exploited. He did so by preying on the natural human fear of the unknown, and by offering God as the ultimate solution for things that scientists, for all of their intellectual honesty, could not. And when we take into account Van Til's own words in regards to the deep regrets that he felt over losing his prized pupil, E.J. Carnell. Upon the release of one of Carnell's books, Van Til was quoted as saying, "I fear I shall again have to appear ungracious in dealing with it. Perhaps I was brought into the world to be a nuisance to others. I want to win Carnell back to the reformed truth in apologetics if I can." It could be argued that Van Til simply regretted losing what he considered to be a bright pupil and friend. It could also be argued that Van Til's authoritarian approach elicited a profound inability to accept that someone that he had mentored had found a path of understanding contradictory to his own. Was it the painful regret of an aging man taking stock of his shortcomings? Or the buried ego of a self-righteously bellicose evangelical raising its head? Regardless of the conclusion, I think we have a better understanding now of Cornelius Van Til, the man behind the rhetoric. He wasn't a god, he wasn't a prophet, he was just a human being. He was a minister, one who so dedicated his life to the church that he loved that he often found himself in stark contention with anyone who thought differently from him. He was a philosopher, a person who studied deeply of human thought and experience, yet ultimately only asked questions and made no actual advances in explaining anything at all. He ferociously defended his faith, his reliance on his belief without evidence, and his deeply emotional need for the Bible to be the absolute truth. His eisegesis divided the church. His entire argumentation is logically invalid, leading to further atrocious argumentation in an attempt to defend it. His disciples are often seen as unforgiving, uncharitable, rabidly myopic zealots. There are some that have even referred to Van Tillism as almost cult-like, that defenders and idolaters of Van Til's belligerent authoritarian style and obfuscating verbiage often engage in the sarcophagi of their fellow Christians should they dare oppose or contradict their viewpoints. And it is such reprehensible behavior that ultimately harms the purported message of Christianity, because it exposes the fallacious argumentation of Van Tillian thought and its intolerance of progressive ideals, ultimately driving the people who encounter such behavior straight into the reliable arms of education, rationality, and reason. So, keep up the good work, boys. And that will conclude our look at Cornelius Van Til, father of presuppositional apologetics. Thank you so much for joining me. If you liked the video, please like and subscribe, and be sure to hit that bell for notifications. Don't forget, this month is Breast Cancer Awareness Month, and in support, my beard will be pink for the whole of October. Donate links are in the description. And if you like scary movies, be sure to check me and my filmmaker friends out at the Week in Horror podcast, now in our 3rd season. All the links you need to support this channel and our podcast are below. Thank you again. I'm JL, and as usual, be safe, be excellent to each other, and together, we can bridge the divide.
Well, I think that pretty much relegates Christianity to the dustbin of history. What more can I say other than bye-bye Christianity? Well, I guess Christianity is kind of what's the word? It's entertaining. That's what it is. Except it's brutal. You know what's entertaining? It's the Christians themselves. They are entertaining. But Christianity itself, Christianity on its own, on its face, is genocidal. Christianity on its face is inhumane. Christianity should be on its face. Period. And I, as an atheist activist, intend to help it along the way as best I can. That was J.L. Warren. I want to thank him very much. That was brilliantly put. Great takedown. Hey God, welcome to the side chat. There was an epic smackdown, I agree. There's one thing I want to that I didn't know, that I kind of picked up during this JL's explanation of presuppositionalist apologetics. I grew up in the apartheid country of South Africa. South Africa at the time, since just after the war, the Second World War, until 1995 or something, I can't remember, but for the longest time, certainly all the time I was there, and certainly 20 years from before I was born, the country was run by white people of Dutch descent. What I knew about those white people of Dutch descent was that they were all members of one Christian denomination, and that was the Dutch Reformed Church. They were all members of Dutch Reformed Church. And I remember J.L. Warren pointing out that the Dutch Reformed Church was essentially a Calvinist institution. So, presuppositionalist apologetics and the apartheid government of South Africa and their church are one and the same. So you got to understand now, you can understand now, that people like Darth Dawkins and other presuppositionalists have the same mindset as the whites who ran apartheid South Africa, the Afrikaners, the Dutchmen who ran South African apartheid. I did not know this until today. I'm kind of gobsmacked. It's like, wow, this is making Christianity look even worse, especially apologetics, way worse. I'd like to introduce the next. Oh, actually, no. I'd like to right now introduce the. I'd like to introduce the link to the chat room. Let me just stick it on there. Okay, so you can join anytime. I will be playing. I will be going through another movie here. The next one is around 12 minutes long, by Digital Hammurabi, and it's more regarding the Old Testament, but it is nevertheless it's relevant to our discussion topic. Is Christianity in disarray? So far, I say absolutely yes. Let's see. Okay. Make sure everything's fine. All right, I'm going to get myself out of here and bring in Digital Hammurabi. Take it away, Jose.
Why is it that people have a problem with a single author composing the first 5 books of the Old Testament? Is it because of religious or atheistic presuppositions? Do scholars simply not believe that Moses could have written it, and so they must develop models to explain how it could have been composed? Although the way I formed those questions betrays my opinion on the matter, I will say that I have yet to meet a Hebrew Bible scholar who appears to be motivated in any way by some religious conviction against Mosaic authorship. Of course, I cannot read people's minds. However, there is an overwhelming abundance of evidence, in my opinion, to support multiple authorship of the Pentateuch, evidence that cannot simply be ignored. Thus, even if certain scholars are in fact motivated by a personal religious or atheistic bias, again I have yet to see these, ridding oneself of this theological bias would in no way do away with the data that is in support of multiple authorship. Let's take a look at some of the features of the Pentateuch that indicate multiple authorship. I will be utilizing several sources, good one, right, in this discussion. They will be linked in the description below. There are things that immediately stand out to someone who reads through the book of Genesis, especially for the first time. First, one cannot help but notice that many stories seem to appear twice in the text. However one reconciles this and their ultimate interpretation of the text, there appears to be 2 creation stories in the first 2 chapters. A few chapters later, there appear to be 2 flood narratives, woven together in chapters 6 through 9. These doublets make it seem like 2 different traditions were brought together and edited into the form of the story that we now see. Not only are there doublets, but there are actual contradictions between details in these different stories throughout the Pentateuch. Was Moses' father-in-law named Reuel, Exodus 2:18, or Jethro, Exodus 3:1? Was the mountain in the wilderness called Sinai, Exodus 19:11? or Horeb, Exodus 3:1? Did Aaron die at Mount Hor, Numbers 20, 23-29, or Moserah in Deuteronomy 10:6? We will go through these doublets, contradictions, and other inconsistencies in the text in a moment, but I wanted to take a moment to connect these problems with the Pentateuch to the models that scholars have developed to address these inconsistencies. First, those who maintain a singular Mosaic authorship seek to individually address each contradiction or doublet in an attempt to find a possible means of reconciling these differing passages. This is necessary if one holds to a particular belief in the inerrancy of the biblical texts, and that God has preserved His Word in such a way that we possess it today. If the Pentateuch, and the Bible as a whole, is the divinely inspired, inerrant Word of God, and Moses authored these first 5 books, then these types of contradictions and doublets pose great difficulty for the interpreter. Thus, a great deal of effort has been expounded to attempt to reconcile these passages to one another. While some of these possible explanations could adequately address some of the problematic passages. Did everyone hear that?
Hello? Hello? Yes?
No one is saying that none of these discrepancies, doublets, or contradictions can be resolved. People tend to hear only what they want to hear, so let's listen to it again just to make sure. While some of these possible explanations could adequately address some of the problematic passages, the sheer number of contradictions, doublets, and general inconsistencies strongly suggests that we should seek a model that more adequately accounts for the data. If we have 2 apparent flood stories in the same chapter that contradict one another in the details, we may be looking at 2 different flood traditions that were brought together into one narrative. Part of the study of the sources that stand behind the Pentateuch is seeing if there is continuity between the various strands that run through the text. In short, there are many doublets, contradictions, and inconsistencies in the Pentateuch that make it very difficult to adequately defend a single Mosaic authorship. We must look to other models to make sense of the data. Let's return to the specific problems that we find in the Pentateuch. We will begin with doublets, duplicating stories that are found in the text. Doublets, by nature, will contain contradictions, which we will specify in a later section. We have already mentioned the duplicated creation stories in Genesis 1 and 2, and the 2 flood stories that appear in Genesis 6 through 9. Now, without doing a complete analysis of this text, we should note a couple of things. First, in the P story, Noah is commanded to take 2 of every kind of animal into the ark, while in J, Noah is commanded to take 7 pairs of clean animals and 2 of unclean animals. In P, the flood lasted 150 days, while in J, the flood lasted 40 days. Bauden summarizes nicely the quintessential nature of this passage with respect to contradictions and doublets. Quote, "The standard example of this is the beginning of the flood story, in Genesis 6:17 through 7:5. In 6:17-22, God tells Noah that he is going to bring a flood and instructs him to bring into the ark 2 of each kind of animal. We are then told that Noah did so, just as God had commanded him, so he did. In 7:1-5, Yahweh tells Noah that he is going to bring a flood and instructs him to bring into the ark 2 of each unclean animal and 7 pairs of every clean animal. We are then told that Noah did just as Yahweh commanded him. The story thus presents the same events happening twice: God's announcement of the flood, instructions about the animals, and the fulfillment of those instructions by Noah, which marks it as a doublet. The story also tells us that, on the one hand, Noah is to bring 2 of every animal, and he does so, and on the other, he is to bring 2 of every unclean and 7 of every clean animal, and he does so. A glaring contradiction." End quote. Of course, Bauden and Collins are not the only ones to notice these doublets and contradictions. Please see the description of this video for a bibliography that you can use to serve a scholarly opinion on these issues. Returning to our analysis. Other clear doublets can be seen in the Pentateuch. It should be noted that Joel Baden restricts the definition of doublet passages in this way. Quote, "Two passages must not only tell a similar story, but do so in a way that renders them mutually exclusive. They must be events that could not possibly happen more than once." End quote. While Baden would not count the wife as a sister story as a doublet, it is certainly a repeated motif seen with Abram in Genesis 12 and 20, as well as Isaac in chapter 26. Collins similarly notes the dual covenants in Genesis 15 and 17, the repeated dealings of Abraham with Hagar in Genesis 16 and 21, though Baden would likely not consider these doublets, strictly speaking. In Genesis 21:31, we see that Beersheba, a city in the south of Israel, is named by Abraham when he swears an oath with Abimelech. However, in Genesis 26:33, the text reports that the city is named after the events surrounding the interaction between Isaac and Abimelech. In Genesis 28:19, the city of Luz was renamed Bethel by Jacob on his way to live with Laban. But in Genesis 35:15, it is changed to Bethel when he is returning from Laban. Furthermore, we know that the city was already referred to as Bethel in the text in Genesis 12:8. Jacob's name was changed to Israel as he wrestled with the divine being in Genesis 32:29, but again by God in Genesis 35:10. Finally, in Exodus 17, before arriving at the mountain, the people run out of water, and Moses strikes the rock, causing it to produce water. The name of the place is then changed to Massah and Meribah. However, in Numbers 20, after leaving the mountain, a similar event takes place at Meribah. Having viewed several examples of doublets in the Pentateuch, let's look at other contradictions that appear in the text. For a convenient collection of these contradictions and other literary difficulties, see Baden's monograph in the description below. As noted above, Moses' father-in-law is named Reuel in Exodus 2, but Jethro in Exodus 3. The mountain in the wilderness was called Sinai in Exodus 19, but Horeb in Exodus 3 and Deuteronomy 1. Aaron died either at Mount Hor in Numbers 20 or at Moserah in Deuteronomy 10. Was the world originally water, Genesis 1, or was it dry, Genesis 2? Were male and female created at the same time, Genesis 1:27? Or was woman created later, from the rib of the man, in Genesis 2:22? Was the creation of man done at the end of the creative process, Genesis 1, or at the end, Genesis 2? Other examples include the occasion of the assigning of duties to the Levites. In Numbers 3 and 4, it occurred after the descent from the mountain, but in Deuteronomy 10:8, it took place in the wilderness of Jotbah. We could ask, why was Moses not allowed to enter the Promised Land? Was it because of his actions at Meribah, as stated in Numbers 22-13, or because of the sins of the people, as in Deuteronomy 1:37-38? Just a couple more. Was the tent of meeting located in the center of the camp, Numbers 2-3, or outside of the camp, Exodus 33:7? Did the Lord remain constantly in the tent of meeting, Exodus 40, or only periodically, Exodus 33? Finally, was Moses unique, Deuteronomy 34, or not, Deuteronomy 18? Again, the position taken here is not that there are no possible answers to any of these doublets or contradictions. It may be convincingly argued that several of these problematic passages could be reconciled to one another. But the number of these literary problems is what leads us to seek a model that better accounts for the data.
Okay. Next one, I'm gonna.
My 175.
Hold on. Whoa. Well, things are not looking good for Christianity. Things are not looking good for the New Testament. Now things are not looking good for Genesis. Christianity is in disarray. Excuse me while I adjust my Afghanistani head covering. Do I look like a Taliban? Well, I'm not a Taliban. Oops. Smacking my desk did not do anything any good. Just a reminder for the one person who's watching, the chat room is open. The link is at the top. Good afternoon, Australia and New Zealand and all points north. Hong Kong. Oh, you guys can see me, I think, now that you're part of China. I think. I'm pretty sure that I never see anybody joining any conversation group anywhere who is from Hong Kong. Huh. I wonder if that's a fact. Is it true that Hong Kong is as restricted from the outside world as mainland China? Can somebody answer me that, please? Now, I was going to say something brilliant, but I forgot what it was. Oh, you know what I do need to do is I need to do like that. All right. The next video, the next 14 minutes, unless we get a discussion group going, will be taken up by Telltale Fireside Chat. Let me just make that change. Telltale Fireside Chat. Fireside Chat. All right. And I did start because you know how it is, slow system. Anyway, this gentleman is gonna talk about he's gonna talk about this crazy televangelist. This is a must see. Stand by. Let's see. No. There we go. Credit the man. And what should we do? Let's slide it in, huh? Slowly.
About is titled Pastor, My 175,000 Hours of Bible Study Tell Me We're 100% in the Last Days. This is written by Beth Stoneburner on the Friendly Atheist website. This article is actually about a guy named Perry Stone. I covered him a while back about climate change. He was talking about climate change. We're going to watch that clip in a second. It's from early August 2021, but I just want to make note of something real quick. With this guy, Perry Stone, his YouTube channel has, wait for it, 600,000 subscribers. That is a whole heck of a heap of subscribers. 651,000 to be exact. That's concerning. We should be taking this guy seriously because he has a big fucking audience who listens to him. He's not a nobody. So the things that he says affect real people in real life. Let's give this clip a listen. Again, it's from early August, and he's explaining why climate change is irrelevant. After we listen to this one, we'll take a look at his newest one, explaining why we're actually in the last days, and he's 100% sure of it. So check this first clip out.
In Revelation chapter 20, when Christ comes back to earth and sets up his kingdom, he's going to change everything. And there's going to be 1,000 years of peace. And so the sons of God and these are the children of God. These are believers who return with Christ to set up the kingdom for 1,000 years. We're going to see a complete change in the earth, and that what we call the travail of creation or the travail of the earth will cease when the Messiah returns. So those who criticize believers now for not being, environmentally concerned or whatever, we know how the book ends. We know where this is going. We know how in the end when Messiah comes back. Look, folks, can I say something to you?
My God, this guy doesn't, like, when he takes a breath, it's mid-sentence. He doesn't take a breath at the periods or the commas. It's like right after a word, or even in the middle of a word, he takes a breath and then just keeps on going. I'm trying to find a break in here. So basically what he's saying is God gave us the planet and all of the animals and everything to have dominion over it, right? You guys remember that verse in the Bible, don't you? Where we're supposed to take care of the planet and the animals and all that stuff. He's saying, stop giving a shit. Who cares? Why should we give a shit anymore? Jesus is coming back. We know how this ends. He's just going to snap his finger and then litter will be gone. We don't have to care. Pollution will just be gone. Fascinating. So it seems like he's finally accepting climate change, but he doesn't care.
It comes back. Look, folks, can I say something to you and say it in love? It's wonderful to do all that we can to help the planet, but at the same time, if you know what the prophecy says, you know what's coming, and you know that real peace, real joy, and everything that men want will only happen with the return of the Messiah.
If I remember correctly, God specifically left the planet and all of the animals on it in our care, didn't he? Didn't he tell us to take care of these things and treat them well and be fruitful and have children and be merry and all that shit? Oh, that verse is inconvenient, so just ignore it, If it's inconvenient to what you already believe, if it doesn't really click in with all the other shit, just throw it out. Who cares? Pretend it doesn't exist. Just one more contradiction marked on the board. So that was Pastor Perry Stone. Last time I covered him, I think it was around early August, and that was the video that we talked about at the time. I just wanted to give you a little bit of a lead up to who he is before getting into this article, and then we're going to watch the next clip from him. So let's give this article a read by Beth Stoneburner, see what she had to say. After hours, too many hours really, of intense study, right-wing Pastor Perry Stone is convinced we have officially entered the prophesied last days described in the Bible. It would be a little more convincing if countless preachers hadn't said the exact same thing many times before. This is a quote from Right Wing Watch on Twitter. Right-wing Pastor Perry Stone claims that he spent 175,000 hours studying the Bible, which equals 8 hours a day for every single day of his life, and declares that he's 100% certain that we literally have entered the last of the last days. So let's give this clip a watch and see what he had to say for himself. This came out early October 2021.
I am absolutely convinced. I'm 62 years of age. I've been preaching for 46 years. And I'm not saying this in a boasting way, but we probably have well over between 172 to about 175,000 hours literally in study. That's reading, studying, word studies, research, reading books. And that's not an exaggeration, because since I was 16 years of age, I would go 4 hours, then 8 hours, and sometimes 10 to 12 hours a day. My staff knows I'm telling you the fact. That's
okay. Even with that as the fact, which, I'm having a little trouble accepting it, but okay, for the sake, let's just humor the guy. Let's say he's accurate in this fact. That's still not 175,000 hours, not even close to it. He said he's been in the ministry for 40 years, right? Let's be generous. Say 10 hours a day, 5 days a week, because, you got to have the weekends off, of course. 10 hours a day, 5 days a week, 52 weeks a year, 40 years. That's 100,000 hours. 104,000 to be exact. Not 175,000. That's 60% of what he actually claimed. I know this is kind of a silly point to harp on. I'm just saying you gotta be accurate when you say shit like this. Come on. Or nobody's gonna believe you. Even saying it's 10 hours a day is like obscenely high.
In fact, that's what I do. And in the process of the study and the research, I am 100% 100%, not 99.5%, that we have literally entered the last of the last days, the time of the end.
Doesn't that sound familiar? Have we heard that from anybody else? I seem to remember our old buddy Stephen Lett saying something similar to that, Jehovah's Witness governing body member.
So the events unfolding around us are making clearer than ever that we're living in the final part of the last days, undoubtedly the final part of the final part of the last days, shortly before the last day of the last days.
People have been claiming that we've been in the last days since the dawn of fucking time. But I do wonder, like, you know, I wasn't alive and aware and keeping track of this shit 50 years ago. Or even 30 years ago, or 20 years ago. I wasn't even paying attention. I wonder if it has gotten more urgent in the past 20 years. I wonder if people are getting, like, more serious about it now than they were 20 years ago. I mean, we don't really have any way of knowing, I guess, because media is completely different now than it was 50 years ago. You know, the internet exists now, and it just didn't exist in its current form 50 years ago. Not like it is now. I really wish we knew, we had some solid way of knowing if they're getting more and more urgent, or if this is just the same bluster we've always heard. But it honestly, it's endlessly entertaining to hear pastors make claims like this, that we're in the last days. I love it. I love listening to these guys stick their foot in their mouth over and over again. Anyway, let's read this article by Beth Stoneburner. This is a quote from the video we just watched. We probably have well over between 172 to about 175,000 hours, literally, in study. Since I was 16 years of age, I'd go 4 hours, then 8 hours, and sometimes 10 to 12 hours a day. My staff knows I'm telling you the fact. That's what I do. And in the process of the study and the research, I'm 100%, not 99.5%, that we have literally entered the last of the last days, the time of the end. This is Beth Stoneburner speaking. Of course, it doesn't matter how long you study if you don't know how to do it right. And claiming 100% certainty about the future based on a close reading of a text that continues to spur debate even in Christian circles is a sure sign that Stone never studied the text properly. Anyone who stayed half awake in seminary could refute this too, regardless of how long they studied, simply because, 1, the Bible says that technically the last days began with the death of Christ, and 2, no one, no matter their credentials, is supposed to know the day or the hour of Christ's return. Maybe Stone skipped those verses during his study sessions. Good point. Jehovah's Witnesses had this addiction to telling the future, to predicting the end. They did it like 16 fucking times throughout history. They did it in like 1874, 1878, 1913, 1914, 1922, 1925, 1975, a billion that I've already missed. They kept doing it, and they kept getting it wrong over and over again. And finally, Jehovah's Witnesses learned from their mistakes and pretty much swore to never make a prediction like that again, never set a date like that. Now, they'll get super urgent about things. They'll say, we're in the last days, we're here. They'll stop saying the last days are near, and they'll start saying the last days are here. That's the kind of shit that they do. And in fact, just, 10 months ago, Stephen Lett said we're in the last days of the last days, or something like that.
So the events unfolding around us are making clearer than ever that we're living in the final part of the last days, undoubtedly the final part of the final part of the last days, shortly before the last day of the last days.
So it doesn't really surprise me that these people are continuing to do this. I'm just surprised they didn't learn from their predecessors, honestly. And also, the fact that they didn't read the verse from the Bible that says nobody's supposed to know the day or the hour of Christ's return. What happened to that? Did they just forget that verse existed? When it's not convenient to what they want, they ignore it. That's the problem. When it's inconvenient, they pretend it's not even there. Let's keep reading. This is Beth Stoneburner again. It's really incredible when people start bemoaning the last days the moment we're dealing with plagues, like a collapsed economy, corrupt leadership, etc. We're always in the last days because it's impossible to fact check. It's not hard for the same people who claim God created the universe in 6 days, because the Bible doesn't specify the length of the days, to stretch the duration of the last days. It means none of us will ever be around to fact check this down the road. The irony is that Christians like Stone could make the case that climate change is an existential threat that better fits the idea of the last days, but they won't make that argument because it would involve accepting the reality of our environmental crisis. That's very true, although some religious pastors, some religious wingnuts have actually accepted it and said that it's the result of God. He's doing this. This is the end of days. This is his plan to destroy the earth through climate change. There is no end to this madness, and I would kill to have a bead on whether or not this is getting more intense over time. I would love to know if it's exactly the same now as it was 50 years ago. I guess that's something that is probably objectively knowable, but it would require an awful lot of research, and I don't know if the data is even there. I don't know if, like, 50 years ago, people were even recording that kind of thing, you know? Like, were televangelists on TV back in the 70s saying this stuff? Possibly. Maybe they were. But we didn't have TVs, say, in 1910 or 1900. We have no way of knowing if it's gotten more intense over the past 100 years. Maybe we can objectively know this over the past 50. It'd be hard to research and find out. But over the past 100 years, I don't know. Past 200-300, probably not something that we could ever know. But damn, it would be interesting to know for sure. Tim Gwaine. Yeah, in the 70s, end times and the rapture were huge. Even a lousy movie series of the rapture and tribulation. I remember in 1988, there was a pamphlet out there that was titled 88 Reasons the Rapture Will Happen in 1988. Fascinating. My God. I didn't realize that. You know, I should definitely write some of this shit down and read some of these pamphlets and some of these, like, materials. Like, Jehovah's Witnesses did a prediction in 1975, too, and it fell flat on its face, of course. See if I can find some of this shit and read it on stream. I think that'd be super interesting.
Well now. Is Christianity in disarray? Is it falling apart? Because it's killing itself. Christianity is like eating itself up, like its own cancer. And these people, like Telltale Fireside Chat pointed out, have 600,000. This one guy has 600,000 subscribers or followers, and he's telling them that we're in the final days of the end days of the end days, so send all your money. Any amount of money is accepted. Did you see the lower third on that pastor's screen about the donations? Yeah, $100, $50, any. It's pretty funny. Now, I just want to remind you, the chat room, she is open, and anyone who would like to join and have a chat, that would be just great. There is a punishment, though, if the room does not get populated, or in one form or another. Right now, it has a population of 1. It's me. But anyway, I digress. You know what? It's not so foggy anymore. So I said I was going to punish you if you didn't come into the chat room, right? Well, if nobody joins the chat room, this is what's going to happen. I, Sidney Winston, am going to subject you, the viewers, to one that's 1 hour 1 hour of Artangelo's voice. You have been warned. The clock is ticking. So do come in. Halloween is approaching. Did I ever tell you that I love vampires? Back in my younger days, a book. I was renting an apartment, and with a friend of mine, and he was reading this book. Well, he told me about a book. I can't remember. We had this conversation. But anyway, he told me about this book, and I went and got a hold of it because I was told it was a very good book. And I bought it. Hey, Simon. Hey, Cryptomaria. And I bought it. And, hey, God, if you're still there. And I read it. I was not impressed with the book at all. Because I knew it was fiction, but I thought that there were people out there who perceived the concept as non-fiction, as, in other words, as temporal, as existing. The book itself was called The Vampire Lestat, and it was written by Anne Rice. Anne Rice, I believe. So, what I got from the book was a very, very great understanding of what a vampire is and what a vampire's life is like. And, you know, with all, besides all the blood sucking, which is there, but also, you know, the thinking vampire. And I've not really been into vampires much since then because I didn't like, you know, I wasn't impressed. You know, it's obviously fake, and if people believe it, then fine, they believe it. And such is my attitude and response to the Christianity story, the Jesus story, mythology. And I can't figure out for the life of me how people can actually believe it. I mean, it's bad enough believing as a Jew or as a Muslim that there's one God. But don't let me get started on the Trinitarian, because the laws of logic and the Trinity are going to be discussed, hopefully in a conversation room at some point when a good conversation is going, when and if people ever join the room. But anyway, I warned you, you're going to get Artangelo for an hour. So I'm going to give you all exactly some seconds or minutes or whatever to get in here. And in the meantime, let's play a tune. How was that?
Nephilim free. Why would anybody like seriously take Nephilim free? He's just troll, from what I understand.
Well, I think that there is no problem if you posit that the evidence of the causation of the universe was not in time. It was a transition, and the cause and effect happened in the course simultaneously.
Is he here? Oh yeah. There he is.
Yeah, okay, so Atandro, here's the argument against Nephilim, right? In order for something to have a cause, right, it needs to come into being, right? Something that doesn't come into being doesn't have a cause, right? Now, in order for something to come into being, right, there needs to be a moment prior in time in which it doesn't exist, right? Since the universe is the sum of all time, space, and matter, there was no time prior to the universe, right? Therefore, there was no time at which the universe didn't exist. Therefore, the universe did not have a cause, right? Given premise one.
Yes, as I said, I disagree with that because everything that begins to exist has a cause, as Kalam, everyone knows it. And if we posit that the event of the causation of the universe was a transition where cause and effect were simultaneously, then there is no problem which you are trying to state right now.
So how can there be simultaneous causation? What differentiates the cause from the effect?
Well, at the moment where you actually cause the instantiate the effect simultaneously occurs, so there is no time lapse, so there is no problem.
Yeah, but I'm saying, what is causation? Like, what is causation? Can you give me a working definition of causation?
Yeah, it is bringing forward something which prior did not exist, and then you instantiate it, cause it.
Yeah, but that's just self-defeating. How can something?
Yeah, how can a cause be prior to time? What does it make? Does it make sense to say that a cause precedes the beginning of time, or just time in general?
No, how can there be? I don't posit it precedes it, because as soon as you say precedes, then you imply time. What I am saying that God was existing in a timeless dimension where there was no yesterday, now, and tomorrow. God simply knew everything. He knows everything, and then he willed the universe into existence at the moment.
Yeah, but
and then willed it into existence.
Yeah, but look,
the effect happened, and the cause and the fact that it was simultaneous, and there was a transition from a timeless dimension into a dimension in time.
How can there be a transition from a timeless dimension?
Well,
yeah,
I don't understand. But I think that the only causes that we know of, who do not need preconditions, is consciousness with will. So, for example, I can will to move my arm.
Yeah, in time,
that
right?
doesn't require anything physical. I just command my brain, and then from
I don't know why we would agree with that.
But look,
to the neurons and to the nerves, and then to my hand,
but look,
and then I start to write. So,
look, you define the cause as. Look, can you just give us your definition of a cause again?
The cause is something which instantiates something into existence.
Yeah, but that's just circular, right? What does it mean to instantiate?
Well, I don't need to go further. It just stops there. That's the explanation of the cause. cause is.
No, but I'm saying, okay, so you're saying it. No, but I'm saying, like, can you give us a further analysis? Right?
No, and I don't think it is necessary because we all know what the cause is. So that is.
Well,
just
okay,
very
look, I'll show you. Look,
words.
let me demonstrate. Let me demonstrate, right? So you say there are causes, great. Look, this is what we experience in the world. There is some event A, some event B, right? A and B generally hold true. We infer whenever A happens, B also happens. Now, here's my question. If there is no event A, right, at one time and event B at another time, how can you distinguish which causes which?
I don't know. I mean,
Oh, okay, you don't know.
Okay,
Well, okay, how about this? How about this? What if we just said, given that you don't know, if there is no
I
distinction?
thought about this. So God is the cause, and the starting of the universe to the singularity, which then starts to expand, and the instantiation of energy, matter, space, and time. That is the effect.
No,
but look,
but what I'm asking is, how do you look? I don't think you understand my question. I'm saying, look, when you say all things that begin to exist have a cause, I'm saying, look,
No, that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that everything that begins to exist has a cause. The universe started to exist.
Yeah, that's exactly
therefore, it had a cause. Now, let me quote you here from Craig. He says, God must causally, but not temporally, be prior to the Big Bang. With the creation
and
of
I'm
the
asking
universe,
how that's possible.
time began, and God entered into time at the moment of creation in virtue of his real relations with the created order.
Yeah, and I'm saying, how is it possible? I know what Craig. I know what Craig says. You don't need to read to me the whole quote. I understand. Look, what I'm saying is that Craig is claiming that something could be causally prior without being temporally prior. I'm saying that's a fundamentally incoherent notion. And the reason I'm saying that is because when we witness cause and effect in every single situation, right, we witness the cause being prior to its effect, right, in some respect, right, either in time or in some other dimension.
Well, I already explained that to you. I said the cause of the Big Bang operated at 2, that is simultaneously.
Yeah, but that just begs the question. That just begs the question.
Yeah, that's just
assuming. Right. I'm saying how. Yeah, I'm saying how can there be? Yeah, I'm saying how. How is there?
Being how
yeah,
to
yeah.
distinguish
You're just
A
begging the
as
question.
the cause and B as the effect when these occur together at the same time. Okay, so even on a mundane level, we regularly experience simultaneous causation.
How so?
Well, so
you don't look, Doug. Even if he grants that there's some sort of contemporaneous causation for the beginning of the universe, he literally said before he started quoting Craig that God had the desire to create the universe, and then he created the universe. How is and then not
well,
a
he's saying it's causally
notion.
prior. It's causally prior. But look,
yeah, but that's just assuming that causation isn't just a temporal notion, and I only conceive causation being a temporal notion.
Yeah, exactly. Look, tangible. Look again. Like you're claiming that everything that begins to exist has a cause. I'm saying, yeah, I agree that we like most things that we think begin to exist have a cause. I'm saying that when you say cause there, what I take you to mean is just the sort of human view of, A happens, then B happens, right? And we, A entails B, and we could distinguish cause and effect by either its dimension in time, or if you have an example of like time travel, we could distinguish it. Well, actually, I don't think time travel would even be a problem here because of time would need to like loop back on itself and stuff like that. So it's not. It wouldn't really be an issue here, right? So now, when you say that there can be a cause, right, outside of time, or that if like causation is some kind of primitive notion, What I'm gonna ask you is, what is the evidence that such a concept actually obtains? Like, what is the notion that causation, in the way you define it, actually exists, right?
Well, the alternative would be that absolutely nothing instantiates the singularity and the expansion of the universe and all in it, which is matter, energy, space, and time. And
No,
this
but
is a
I'm
co-
saying,
and this is
is there?
completely
Can
meaningless or
no?
senseless
I understand.
proposition because we know that
No, but
nothing
I'm
has no
saying,
causal powers.
yeah,
And
yeah.
since we
But I'm
know that
saying,
there was no
yeah, yeah.
universe and then there was a universe, then of course something had to instantiate, right?
Why? What's the argument?
Well, the argument is that nothing has no causal power. Something cannot come from nothing.
Yeah, but why can't we just say
Yeah,
it
what's
had
the
no
argument
cause?
that God's causal power
Why
was...
couldn't we just say? Why couldn't one second? Why couldn't we just say that it had no cause?
I just told you because something can come from nothing. Nothing has no causal power.
But I'm saying there is no cause, right?
And I am saying that nothing has no causal powers. Since there was no universe,
Yeah, I know
and then
nothing
there
has
was
no
a
causal
universe,
I'm saying
and
I
that means that the
understand.
universe had a beginning, then that
I
had to
understand.
be something which caused the universe.
You don't need to ramble. You don't need to ramble. Look, I'm saying that I understand that something doesn't have causal powers. What I'm saying is
I
that
can hear you.
what difference does it make, right? I'm saying I'm not positing that nothing caused the universe. I'm saying that the universe had no cause. There was no cause, right?
And I
There's
am
no
telling
causation.
you that if you have no cause, you cannot have an effect.
Well, but I'm not. Of course, but that's trivial. But I'm saying the
No,
universe
that's not
isn't an
trivial.
effect. I'm saying the universe isn't an effect. It didn't have a cause. Right?
And
I'm
I am
saying it
telling
doesn't
you,
have.
if it has no cause, will it pop up out of absolutely nothing?
That's a temporal notion.
It didn't pop out of anything.
And so you are telling me that it had no cause. That's meaningless. That's senseless because nothing
Why
has
is
no
that
cause.
meaningless?
Because nothing
Why is
has
that
no,
meaningless?
because nothing has no causal powers.
It's not being caused by nothing. It just doesn't have a cause.
Yeah. So what? So if it had no cause, then there was no causal agency. So we are here in terms that you are stating that nothing created it, which is meaningless, which is senseless.
Oh my God!
Why
Are
is
you
it
so, like
meaningless?
why? Look, Tangelo, like why are you this stupid? No offense, but like you're seriously like look. We're explaining to you a
statement is
billion
Yes, you are
times.
offending me
with
because
reality.
I
Like
was very
you're.
clear. There are basically two possibilities here. Either the universe had a cause or it had no cause. What is it?
Yeah. Yeah, I'm saying it had no cause.
Okay, so you are claiming basically, in other words, that nothing created it.
No.
Yes.
How does that follow?
Yes.
Look, you're saying.
Yes,
Look, you're
that's what
treating
you're claiming.
nothing.
That is an
Look,
alternative.
you're treating nothingness as if nothingness is a cause. I'm saying that it had no cause. There was nothing. There was no causation involved.
Had no cause is not identical to reflexively to nothing caused the universe or nothingness caused the universe. He's just conflating.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's just.
that doesn't
We're
follow.
saying there's no causation.
You are playing with words here.
Yeah, the distinction is in one scenario, right? You have an event A, right, that leads to event B, right? In the other scenario,
So there
you
was
just
just
have
one
event
event
B,
that is
right?
because the universe started. The universe began to exist. So you have two possible explanations here. One is that nothing created it. The other is that the cause, something caused it into existence. Which of
Yeah,
the
why
two
can't we
options
just
are
say?
you
Why
positing?
can't we just
Can I
say
say
that?
something?
No, that's not a
Let
true
him chime in.
dichotomy. We could just say that there was no creation, there was no cause,
Okay, so
there's
then
no
you are
causation.
claiming that nothing caused the universe into existence.
No,
That's
no,
it.
no. Do you understand the distinction between saying, nothing caused something and saying something didn't have a cause, right?
No, there actually isn't a difference. The point is that
How is that the
words.
same thing?
You are playing
No, I
with
can't
How is
believe
that the
words.
same thing?
Hey, you guys, wait. Go, Quan. Go ahead.
Yeah, nothing isn't a thing. So you're speaking of it as if it's a thing, right? It doesn't mean, like, the meaning of the word is referring to no thing.
Yeah, so either
It doesn't have a
either a
Yeah,
so
known
what's
thing
the problem with
created
the universe being uncaused?
or
Right?
something created the universe. That's a true dichotomy. That's
Look,
all
I'm
what
saying,
you
what's
have to
the
pick.
what's the
Why do
contradiction
you
with saying?
interrupt me when I am talking?
because you're strawmanning us, right?
No, I am not strawmanning you.
Right.
I am not strawmanning you. I am being very clear with my proposition. I understand that there is a true dichotomy. Either the universe had a cause or not. If you claim that it had no cause, that means that nothing basically created it. What is
No,
it
but
and why?
What? It could just
That
be
doesn't
eternal,
follow.
not that nothing was involved in it.
Yeah, look, all it means to say that the universe had no cause is just that even if it had a beginning, right? Let's just say it had a beginning, like it had a first moment, right? It just means that that first moment had no cause. It's just like
Yeah,
a brute
so
fact.
nothing created it. How is that logical or reasonable?
Oh no, not
Well,
nothing.
what's the
Hey,
contradiction?
Antangela, can I ask
Well,
you a
what's the
question?
contradiction?
It's fine to just agree with him here and just say, yeah, nothing created it, but nothing.
Yeah,
Yeah, what's the
Daddy,
contradiction?
Daddy Smoke, ask.
Yeah, go there.
Can you explain how that follows? Because I'm not seeing how it follows.
Who are you asking?
What's the entailment, right?
What's the argument for that, right?
Wait, are you guys?
No, look.
Can I
it's-
say something?
it's
Wait,
what
Dark.
Otangelo? No, Frank. No. Yeah, after I'm done. So
Okay.
the whole thing is that even if we grant right Otangelo's notion of contemporaneousness, how does it follow that contemporaneous causation is reflexively identical to atemporal causation? What's the argument for that? What's the argument that causation can happen outside of time? The simultaneous does not mean immutable. It just means that the cause happens at the same time as the effect. It doesn't say that that this is working under an immutable realm necessarily. So what's the argument?
That's what I am saying. I'm saying that God, beyond the physical universe, existed in a timeless, immutable dimension, and then He willed the universe into existence at
And
the
then
moment.
He willed the universe. So how did
Why are you
Daddy Smoke,
interrupting
Daddy
me?
Smoke.
I finish now my sentence. So, at the moment that He willed the universe into existence, He caused it, and cause and effect was simultaneous, and He enters time. What is the problem?
Yeah, that's the problem that I'm taking issue with, because you say that He exists in this immutable dimension, and within this immutable dimension where there is no change, there is a moment in time
I didn't say there was
in which He decided to.
I didn't say that.
Well, you just said and then. God had the desire to create the universe, and then He created it. How is and then not a temporal notion? That's what I'm asking you.
Desire, I didn't say and then. I said just that He existed in a timeless dimension which was changeless, where He knew everything, and He willed the universe into existence, and there was that change, that transition, which was the beginning of the universe, where cause and effect were simultaneous.
I heard an and.
Well, so His will and then, right? And we're arguing like, how is that in any sense of the word immutable? That's what we're arguing against you about.
Yeah, look, Artangelo, it's like very.
Maybe I don't have an understanding and explanation and answer to your question, but then we also have to put all the possible explanations on the table. And if you say that there was no cause, then you remain with no cause at all, and then it would mean that nothing instantiated the universe, which is absurd.
Why is that? No, what's the contradiction with saying there's
It has nothing to do with the contradiction. It is ontologically impossible that absolutely nothing can instantiate something.
Okay, so what? Okay, so what's the problem if it's not a contradiction?
The problem is that nothing has no causal powers, because nothing is by.
Yeah, I agree. Nothing has no causal powers.
Absolutely
Yeah.
nothing.
Yeah, I agree.
I
agree that nothing has no causal powers. I agree.
Yeah,
So what? So I'm not positing a cause. So what? Well, why would I need causal powers if I'm not positing a cause?
Because nothing has no causal powers. That's why.
Yeah, I know. Why?
Look,
I'm
he's
saying, why
saying
would I
he's
need
saying
causal powers?
nothing.
Because only if you have a cause, you can instantiate something. If you don't have a cause, you cannot. That's very simple and very basic.
But I'm not saying the universe was caused. I'm not saying it was caused. I'm saying it had a first moment in time.
I mean, if you are not saying it, you imply it. It is obvious.
Why am I implying it?
Okay,
How am I implying it?
That's playing word games. If you don't want
How
to
am I playing
understand,
word
you're
games?
entitled to. I think I made my case. If you don't understand or reject it, that's up to you.
Can I provide an
No, but I'm
example
asking.
which
But I'm
what he's saying is
asking you.
possible?
Yeah, but I'm asking. Look, I'm asking you. Look, what I'm asking you, right, is how am I implying the universe had a cause by saying it had no cause?
Because either it had a cause or it had not a cause. That's the two
Yeah, I'm saying it
dichotomies.
didn't have a cause. I'm
Okay,
saying
so
it didn't have
so
a
you are
cause.
claiming that nothing created it. I am restating for the 10th
That's
time
not the same
now
thing.
what that implies.
That's not
And
the
if you
same
are
thing.
not understanding
That's not the same thing.
yes, it
That's
is
not
the
the
same
same
thing.
thing.
You don't have any other option.
How is that the same thing?
Okay, I'm done.
No. You're not. Look,
Oh my.
I don't understand. I don't understand. We're being very charitable. Look, you're saying. Look, what I'm saying is that the universe had no cause, right? You're saying, well, nothing couldn't have caused the universe because nothing doesn't have causal powers. Then I clarify and say, I know it doesn't have causal powers. There's no issue with that because we don't need causal powers. I'm not
I
saying there
told you
was a
that I'm
cause,
done with
right?
that argument and with you, so I will not repeat what I already said and clarify. So if you didn't understand it, that's your problem.
Okay,
not
so
mine.
go ahead and talk to someone. Okay, so anybody else
Yes,
want
I
to
would
have
like
a go
to
ahead?
talk to someone else.
Sure, I'll talk to him.
Yeah,
So are you
maybe
conceding? Sorry, you can go.
maybe I could
Let
just try
Daddy
and clarify.
smoke. Ask him.
Okay, sure.
So are you conceding that it's not logically impossible for the universe to begin to exist without a cause?
Yes.
Said yes.
I didn't hear that clearly.
Yes, your sentence is not logically incoherent. So go ahead now.
Okay, so if it's not logically incoherent, why couldn't I posit that as the explanation for the universe rather than your God hypothesis?
Yes, you can posit it, but it is immediately refuted by the fact that absolutely nothing means that there was nothing that could have done something. Therefore, it could not instantiate something. Something cannot come from nothing.
Didn't you just agree that that was possible?
No, I said that you didn't make a logical error in your sentence. That are different things. Logic is one thing, ontological possibility is another. Absolutely nothing is the absence of anything, and obviously therefore cannot instantiate something.
Wait, what's ontological possibility? I've never heard of that.
Okay.
It just means what can exist in reality,
right?
Whether or not it's a contradiction.
Whether or not it's a contradiction, but he already agreed that there wasn't a contradiction.
Yeah, he's saying it's not contradictory, but it's metaphysically impossible.
Correct.
And what's the criterion for that? Like, how do you
understand what absolutely nothing is? Please explain it to me.
Pardon?
What means absolutely nothing?
Just means all existential propositions are false and all non-existential propositions are true.
What is the contrary of something?
Well, okay, yeah, right.
Okay, sure. No, Tangela, you were saying?
Are you still not understanding what nothing means?
No,
I thought we already came up with the definition.
Okay, good. So we are agreeing in agreement that absolutely nothing cannot do something because it is the absence of anything, right?
Okay. Yes.
Okay,
and?
so your only alternative is that there has to be a cause if substantiated the universe.
Okay, that doesn't follow.
Yes,
What
it
we
follows
can say
because
is,
we have a true dichotomy here. Either the universe had a cause or it had no cause. If you agree with me that no cause cannot instantiate something, then obviously it had a cause.
no, I just don't think those are two identical statements. Nothing caused the universe, and the universe had no cause. I don't think those are identical statements given the definition of nothingness.
I'm not going to play word games with you. Okay?
How is this a word game, right? One is affirming the
Would
existence of a
someone else
cause,
like to
and
have
is
a
just saying
conversation
that the
with me because
cause is
I'm done with you
nothingness.
both? Okay?
One in one scenario you're affirming, right?
Wie heißt du übrigens? Verifziert.
Ich glaube, ich mag es einfach L4 genannt zu werden.
Okay. Möchtest du mit mir quatschen, weil die zwei
Sure, sure.
ziemliche...
Yeah. Sure, I try.
Okay.
So, I think an example of what... So I think something that could help your intuitions more is like a B theory of time, maybe. So you have a... I know they meant something different.
I'm sorry. We had that conversation already, and I don't want to go through it again. Why I don't think that this is a plausible scenario.
But he's just using it as a thought experiment.
Yeah.
Angela, would you say that there's a third option? Like, your dichotomy doesn't make sense. Could you say something along the lines of something either caused the universe, nothing, or I wouldn't say nothing because that's an odd thing. We're saying not something caused the universe, or there is a third understanding upon which we don't understand because this is our epistemology and we shouldn't confuse it with ontology.
Yeah, what can be asserted without evidence can be discarded without evidence. If you don't know the third option, then it doesn't have to be considered.
But you're the one asserting, and I'm saying I don't know. There's possibly a third option because we still have to discover the ontology of the universe to figure that kind of shit out.
Well, did you understand what I just said? I said that if you claim that there might be a third option, but you have no evidence for it, then my answer is what can be claimed without evidence can be discarded without evidence. Since you have no evidence of the third option, so I am justified and warranted to discard it.
I do have evidence. Here's my evidence. We often like to say that we can guess the ontology of the universe, but we are wrong. Even when we pose these dichotomies, it is not appropriate to look forward and say, therefore this or therefore that. Given the same example of mathematicians trying to prove God, x times y equals God, but x times y also refutes God, so solve for x and y. Science, when you're using science like that, and you say, well, either something caused or nothing caused, I would say science is saying we don't know, right? It could be something that would be completely different from the concept of cause, which is really what Dog J. Throbbin here is trying to tell you, is that the concept of a cause, right, couldn't even apply to the ontological beginning or whatever happened before the universe. Why are you asserting that true? Why are you asserting this dichotomy?
I didn't claim it before the universe. I said that there was a cause beyond the physical universe, which was eternal, changeless, and timeless, and that willed the universe into existence. And since minds can cause things without any physical preconditions, so he willed the universe into existence and created it through his power and his intent.
So you know all the properties of the universe for that statement to be true?
I don't have to.
You don't have to. So you know that the universe has to work with cause and effect. And anything that created the universe has to work with cause and effect. And cause and effect will always be a concept in our space-time with just how much you know about the universe. That's what you're claiming?
The cause and the effect can have been simultaneous. There was no temporal interval from the cause to the effect. It happened simultaneously.
Could you have a naive understanding of something and nothing and a dichotomy and creationism and how the universe came to be, could you have a naive understanding with how little we know about the universe to even to come to those conclusions?
Well, I think
This
we
is
know
really
enough
an interesting
to make
criticism.
an intelligible and plausible and logical scenario here. And besides the evidence which we have, which is through science, and cosmology, which basically which most likely had at the beginning, we have also direct revelation through the Bible. So these are two legs which warrant us to hold that view, which I hold.
Well, Revelation looks to have failed as far as predictable powers in a system that can actually give us the ontology of what's happening.
I don't
But
know.
let me give you an example. Let me give you an example. Hold on, J-Thor, I'm gonna let you finish. Let me give you an example of what I'm trying to talk about, evidence. Many people sat around the volcano saying that we need to either throw more virgins in, we need to scapegoat, or we need to pray hard enough, and nobody guessed tectonic plates. So humans are very terrible at guessing the ontology of the universe, and I'm curious why you think you're so good.
I'm not saying that I am so good. I think I go with Romans 4:19-22 in the Bible, which says that creation points to a creator. And that is something which we know intuitively to be true. And we have science, and science has moved us a bit forward to understand from the macro to the micro, from the cosmos to the biochemistry, to atoms, to subatomic particles, and what we see is that there is an unfolded order and complexity and stability of and that demands an explanation. And I don't know any other principle besides intelligence which can instantiate the things that we see in the natural world.
The scientific method is the best method we have used to predict these things. So the scientific method is what you're leaning on right now, and it has been the best method for us to move forward, but it does not make claims about the ontological before universe. It only makes claims about what it can prove and what it can show as a theory. It does not say what is and that happened before, and it does not claim a God.
Yeah, I am not using scientism in my epistemological framework. I use philosophy
Really?
and theology as well, besides science. I can quote you here from Johannes Kepler. He said, when things are in order, if the cause of the orderliness cannot be deduced from the motion of the elements or from the composition of matter, it is quite possibly a cause possessing a mind. So,
Did Kepler know everything?
we don't have to know everything. What we can do is based on the knowledge that we do have, making logical deductions or abductive reasoning to the best explanation. And I think that the knowledge that we do have permits us reasonably to infer design and an intelligent creator as the more case adequate and potent causal principle of the created order which we observe in the universe compared to random unguided
where you're
events,
coming from.
which basically when you remove God as a causal principle from the equation, then you remain with nothing.
I agree where you're coming from,
Yeah,
Angelo,
so
but to
I just wanted to
introduce
point
Jace
out.
Robin here, well, let me respond real quick. Introduce Jace Robin. Your logic, if it was flawed, would you want to know at all about your logic that you're trying to use for your inference rules?
Yes, we are having a conversation, and obviously, if you have a case which is more logical, plausible, and rational, I hope that I am sufficiently unbiased to recognize that, then obviously I would move my worldview and position from theism eventually to atheism. So if you think that atheism or materialism or naturalism has more explanatory power in regards to our origins, but hey, be my guest, explain to me how we can exist without a creator.
Tangela, can I ask you a question?
Sure.
Pardon, I didn't hear you.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm still not hearing.
Yes, you can ask.
Do you think theism is more parsimonious than naturalism?
What?
I I just want to apologize for the buzzing of the audio. That's not coming from me. It's coming from Artangelo's recording of the Discord room, Discord server channel. And in the chat of this channel, they've actually been asking Artangelo to do something about his mic, and he said he's going to fix it, but it doesn't look like he ever does. So this was right in the very beginning when the buzz was really noticeable. It kind of, for me anyway, I kind of get used to it. So I just wanted to apologize for the buzz on behalf of Artangelo Grasso.
By testimony.
Basically, just more in line with Occam's razor, just as a simplified definition.
Okay. Well, I think following Occam's razor is a good method, but you cannot use it to reduce everything. That means in order to have a certain kind of complexity, you can reduce, but you cannot reduce too much, because otherwise the cause is not sufficient to explain the complexity in question.
But it just sounds like he's saying yes, that God is necessary, like his attributes are necessary to explain the complexity in the universe. So he's saying, yeah, it's in line with Occam's razor.
Okay, so since naturalism is making less ontological assumptions, right? It's not assuming an omniproperty God. It's not assuming a mind. It's not assuming this mind is outside of time and space. These properties would have to be necessary in order for them to be in line with Occam's razor. So why would I think they're necessary, Antangelo?
Well, you have basically two competing hypotheses here. One is where there is intelligence involved, and the other where there is no intelligence involved. Okay? Now the thing is that what we see here is a state of affairs where you have a universe which is just right, which has the right values, the right physical constants, which are necessary to have a life-giving universe. You have forces which are constant, which must be secured. They could be the four fundamental forces. They could be oscillating or popping in and out constantly into existence. And there is nothing further that would ground them. And then if you do not posit a creator which secures them, then everything basically would become possible. And then you have, in regards of the origin of life, you see instructional assembly information instantiating complex multi-part machines, which are proteins, which work in a clockwork fashion together. So I think these are all things which are best explained by the action of a very intelligent designer, which made all these things with a specific purpose in mind.
Okay, so why couldn't all those things be explained by naturalistic properties?
Well, first
is
of
it because
all,
they're too complex?
Well, we can start with the laws and constants of physics. You have basically an infinite range of possible forces, and if we would expect a naturalistic universe, then eventually any kind of values would be there in these forces, and almost all of them, there would be no life permitting. And only if we posit an intelligence with a goal in mind and with foresight would instantiate precisely the values which then would be life permitting. And we are talking here about hundreds and hundreds of different precisely tuned constants which must be just right. That starts with the expansion of the universe, with the fundamental forces of the atoms, with the fine-tuned planet Earth, with fine-tuning biochemistry, where the nucleobases in nucleotides must be just the right ones in order to have quantum base pairing, So that is one thing. And as I told you before, whenever we see a blueprint or instructional assembly information to make a device for a specific purpose, we know that intelligence is a capable mechanism to instantiate that blueprint. We have no evidence whatsoever that unguided random events could create blueprints.
Okay, so I don't understand how theism could explain all of that given the belief in miracles, that God is capable of violating these natural fine-tuning laws that he's created. So they could be anything else so long as God creates some miracle to will it that way.
Well, if he is the creator of the laws of physics, of course he can also temporarily remove them in order to make a miracle. So I see absolutely no problem.
So then how do you account for the uniformity of nature if you can temporarily violate them? How would you be sure that the laws of physics, the laws of electromagnetism are going to be here tomorrow?
This problem wouldn't be there on naturalism because there wouldn't be a mind with intelligence. Whereas these
natural
arbitrary
processes don't run under the same issue because they don't appear to have conscious whims, whereas minds by definition do.
Well, God he secures the universe in order to be stable, the fundamental forces, the laws of physics.
But what's the argument that that's necessarily the case?
Well, I gave you the argument. If you remove God...
No, that it's necessarily the case. You said, you even conceded that it was possible, right, given under your account that your account is true and that it accounts for more of the data than naturalism. But we're talking about, can you account for God necessarily, right, that these laws have to derive from an intelligence? And I just see that you haven't answered adequately that question.
Well, as I told you previously, under naturalism, we should expect either no universe whatsoever, because in order to have a universe, you need to derive expansion rate, and you can have basically a limitless number of values of the field.
Well, there's no nomological contradiction in natural processes accounting for expansion rates. I don't see the issue.
What I'm trying
like where is the nomological impossibility that what you just said couldn't happen? Do you know what nomological impossibility is?
No.
It's basically something that it is impossible that it could happen given how the laws of nature work, right?
Well, what we try
to
find is...
So I'm asking you, how is it, given our understanding of how the laws of nature function, why can't the natural processes on their own account for the expansion rates? Because there doesn't seem to be any sort of contradiction with the natural processes accounting for these things and the laws of nature as we understand them.
Yeah.
That's what I mean by nomological here.
Okay. The various constants and parameters for a life-permitting universe must exist within a finite range for the existence of biological life to be possible. These constants and fine-tuned parameters could have taken any of the infinite number of different values. The probability of it occurring by chance approaches close to zero, but it is in practical terms factually zero. Best explanation is an intelligent agent that had the goal in mind, that is to create a contingent being designed our life-permitting universe.
What's the contradiction?
But you realize that that's not that it's usually a trichotomy that's presented between chance, design, and necessity. So why is necessity so improbable that it can explain the expansion rates and how we understand our finite universe?
Yes, these values could basically take any value, and that is precisely the fine-tuned problem which is acknowledged in cosmology. Basically, all physicists, they know that there is fine-tuning in the universe, and that the values which actually
Well, no, I'm not asking you. I'm not asking you for the authority of physicists on this issue. I'm asking whether or not you think that the laws of nature as we understand them couldn't just be necessary.
Yeah. At the very beginning, there was a unified force which was very compressed and concentrated in a singularity. And then when the evolution or expansion or inflation of the universe happened, these forces changed, okay, and they became the four fundamental forces that we know, which is gravity, electromagnetism, the strong and the weak force. So since there was that transition, that means that there is no physical necessity to have just one value.
I don't see how that follows. Necessary here just means that it just couldn't be otherwise, right? There could be transitions.
Right, since there was
there could be transitions.
Since there was a transition, that means that the forces they are not further fundamental. Okay, so when science actually tries to understand the fundamental properties of nature, they have been discovered and described, and the values that are given and put into the equations to have the values that we have, they cannot be predicted. You could put another kind of value, and an example, for example, is the mass of a proton and the mass of a neutron. They are composed of quarks, and quarks, they have different masses. So you can combine them differently, and as soon as you combine them differently, then you will not have a state of affairs of neutral charge.
Doug, do you think any of this follows?
So what I am saying here, I'm answering precisely what you are saying now. There can be a different state of affairs where atoms are differently composed with a different combination of quarks, and then you would not have neutral atoms, but you would have ions with charge, and they would annihilate in a fraction of a second, and there would be no atoms, no matter, no periodic table, no molecules, and we wouldn't be here having this conversation. So there is no physical necessity for atoms having the composition that they have.
Tangelo, but what you said about the transition could just equally be matched. Like, why wasn't the transition for these ions and these things being composed of matter? Why couldn't the transition for those things coming to be necessary? I don't see the problem.
Well, as I told you, we have atoms which are stable, but we also know that there are atoms which are not stable. So we have the possibility of the two states of affairs. So that means that there is no physical necessity for atoms to be stable. But if atoms wouldn't be stable, we wouldn't be here having this conversation. So the fact that atoms are stable and that they are held together with forces that they have, and that the charges plus charge of electrons and protons and neutrons, they cancel out, and then
but I think you're just ruling out physical necessity, because you have this notion that physical necessity is just causally impotent to make atoms be stable over time. But the necessitarian could just respond and say, well, why can't atoms functioning in a stable manner be necessary over time? It's like, why is that a problem? Why isn't atoms being stable over time not a necessary function of the universe?
Yeah. As soon as I can demonstrate you that there can be a different state of affairs, your claim of physical necessity is falsified.
Well, how does that follow? He's just saying that the life-permitting atoms or stuff, they're the way they are, and they couldn't be otherwise. How is demonstrating a different state of affairs is otherwise? at all a defeater.
Yeah, that's what I tried to explain to you during all the answers I gave already. So I would have to repeat myself. Okay, so it is an extreme position to take and to claim that the universe could not be non-life permission. But I can imagine without any problem a universe where everything would be equal, but where we would not have a moon which goes around the Earth. And as soon as that would be the case, there would be no life on Earth. Okay? So I could also imagine a state of affairs where there are nucleobases, nucleotides, with a different isomeric composition and different atoms in the ring structure, and then you could not have hydrogen forces binding them to have Watson-Crick base pairing. Then you wouldn't have an information steering or semantophoretic molecule with DNA, and then there would also be no life. So the claim that we would eventually exist because of physical necessity is a very, very extreme position, and I just refuted it, I guess.
Well, refute. So what exactly? Because so do you have an actual study that does the Bayesian probability for how an intelligence is more likely than, let's say, physical necessity, like a paper?
Well, as soon as I explained to you that it is perfectly possible to have a non-life permitting universe, the claim of physical necessity is refuted, and I just did that. So I don't need to use the further explanation.
But where? Yeah, but I'm asking the arguments, right? Not the way that you think that a mind accounts for these laws of the universe as you conceive of them in comparison to them being physically necessary. I'm asking for an argument, right? I'm not asking like from how you think an intelligence accounts for these things, right? So why is it?
I'll give you an argument. The existence of a life-permitting universe is very improbable on the naturalistic, very likely on theism. A universe formed by naturalistic, unguided means would have its parameters set randomly, and with high probability there would be no universe at all. The fine-tuned parameters of the right expansion rate of the universe would most likely not be met. In short, a randomly chosen universe is extraordinarily unlikely to have the right conditions for life. A life-permitting universe is likely on theism, since a powerful, extraordinarily intelligent designer has the ability of foresight and knowledge of what parameters, laws of physics, and finely tuned conditions would permit a life-permitting universe. Under Bayesian terms, design is more likely rather than non-design. Therefore, the design inference is the best explanation for a finely tuned universe.
I don't see the entailment that naturalism is the fine-tuning parameters are just arbitrary and random. Why couldn't there be some naturalistic explanation as to why they are the way they are?
Well, I mean,
as opposed to being random.
If you claim that there is evidence, well, provide it to me. As long as you cannot, I will reject the hypothesis and the possibility.
Wait, didn't he claim that theism was necessary for that or something?
No,
I could be wrong.
No, I didn't say it's necessary. I said it's more likely.
Probable.
Yeah.
Okay.
You want to ask him?
No, I don't have any more questions for him.
Okay, guys, I think I'm going to say things.
Dog, are you there?
Yeah, what's up?
You wanted to ask him anything?
No, that's it.
All right.
Okay, guys, have a good one. Next time.
Have a good day.
Have a good day.
I told you I would punish you if you did not join the conversation. Well, 2 hours of videos is way more than anyone should be subjected to, and I've subjected you to 2 hours of videos. And in those 2 hours, my audited count of all those who entered this chat room is just me, just little old me. Alrighty, it's approaching 10 o'clock at night in my in my time zone, so I'm going to bid you adieu. Please, have you heard about my story about how much I like coffee? Well, I did, and if you'd like to buy me a cup or a bag of coffee beans, fresh roasted coffee beans, please feel free. We will see you again really soon. Have a lovely evening, have a lovely morning, have a lovely night.